Hey my dudes, my name is Cecilia and welcome to my kitchen here in Stockholm, Sweden. Today is the 5th day of our 12 days of Christmas and we are making pepparkakor. Think of pepparkakor as like the Swedish version of gingerbread, except these are really thin and crisp, but they're not usually soft. This recipe comes from my farmor, my paternal grandmother, and I've made this recipe every year since I could walk, basically. It is the recipe that I have grown up with. Because of that, it's a little bit different than the modern pepparkakor that you would see in Stockholm nowadays. Those are usually really heavily spiced with a combination of cloves, cinnamon, ginger, sometimes allspice, and they're usually pretty pungent. These are definitely more subtle and are flavored with only cloves and orange zest, so they still have a lot of flavor, but just not like punch you in the face flavor. I love making these and they definitely are like a highlight of my Christmas time, so let's go make them.
Into a small pot, pour 285 grams of golden syrup and 285 grams of sugar. Place on the stove on medium heat. Stir occasionally. We want to melt the sugar crystals but not cook the water out. As soon as the sugar is dissolved, take off the heat and pour into a large bowl. Scale out 285 grams of room temperature butter and slowly whisk in about a tablespoon at a time. This helps cool the syrup down and ensures that all the butter gets incorporated without splitting. If the syrup mixture is still super hot after adding the butter, let cool down until it's just warm. Add in the first egg and whisk until fully incorporated. Add in the second egg and again whisk until fully incorporated. Zest an entire orange into the batter, and then add 2 teaspoons of freshly ground cloves and 2 teaspoons of baking soda. Stir to combine. Now this is where things get a little funky. Add in about a third of the flour and whisk it up a bit. Add in a bit more flour, switch to a spoon, and mix again. My grandmother never had an actual total for the amount of flour she used. Sometimes it was less, sometimes it was more. She would add flour until a really thick batter formed. I stopped at this point when the batter was making thick ribbons. There was about 180 grams of flour left over, meaning I added in about 650 grams. Save the leftover flour as this is what you will use to roll out the cookies, and that's how it'll get incorporated into the final cookies. Put a layer of plastic wrap on contact on the batter and stick in the fridge overnight.
The oven is being preheated to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. And I have our dough fresh out of the refrigerator. And it is now very stiff. This is like a normal dough at this point. And this is where things continue to be a little bit grandma old school, right? I have here a pan with a piece of parchment. Put that to the side. I have my rolling pin, my offset spatula, and my 2 cookie cutters. I usually make like a whole bunch of different kinds, but the most traditional shapes are definitely a heart, but also a pig. But often you'll see like men or women, that's fairly common. I always do Christmas trees because I have Christmas trees, whatever. But hearts and pigs are the most common, so that's what I'm gonna be using today. I also have the leftover flour. And you want to be fairly generous the first couple times around. And now, this is what I'm saying about old school, right? You take your spoon and you carve out pieces of your pepparkakor dough. And you're like, Cecilia, surely, you who have worked in bakeries and restaurants and blah, 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 there has to be a better way. And listen, I'm sure there is. I've thought about it. But I've made these cookies since I was 3 years old. And my grandmother has made these cookies for 60 years? I don't know, maybe longer. This way. And when I deviate, I get pushback. So next year, maybe I will do modern pepparkakor and we can talk about how I would do this in a bakery. But I have done this the same way every single year since I was 3 years old. And they work beautifully. So we're not gonna mess with the system that works, right? So now I have my dough, my nice little ball of dough here, and this spoon included. How home baker is this? This goes back in the fridge because you don't want it to get warm. Gonna add a little bit more flour on top and we begin to roll it out. Not only does having a lot of flour help it like not stick to the countertop, but also like you're working the flour in, like the flour that you didn't add in, like this is, you're now working it into the dough this way. This helps keep the dough from getting really tough and from the cookies from getting tough as well. You want to be picking it up every so often so you know that it's not sticking and like turning it and stuff. I also have a large offset that like if it's stuck to the table, you can go underneath it with the large offset. I'm gonna add a little bit more flour so it doesn't stick. All right, the key to making good pepparkakor is that the dough needs to be, that they're thin. This is good. I know it's thin enough because like I can like read through it basically. Let me see if I can get a piece of paper or something so I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I have this guy here. It says intro. It's a little sign I hold up for myself at the beginning of my intro shots. Cute, right? Okay, so we're just gonna slide that underneath. Do you see how you can read intro through here? That means that this is thin enough because I can read through the dough. When my mom, who is not Swedish, so family history time. My Swedish grandmother, who I get a lot of these recipes and like whose recipe this is, that's my dad's mom. That's my farmor, my paternal grandmother. At one point, my mom was trying to get in good with the in-laws and so was gonna make these pepparkakor. And what she did, which I thought was really smart, is that she rolled this out on a glass cutting board. I don't know who has a glass cutting board. I don't know. We had a glass cutting board. It was the 90s. Who knows? We had a glass cutting board and she would roll it out and then she would stick newspaper underneath. And then that's how she could know that they were like thin enough. So that's another good trick for you. So thanks, Mom, for that one. And as with all cookies, you want to punch them out as tight as possible within reason. I'm not going too crazy here. Also, the first couple rounds when you're really working in quite a bit of flour, they are like tricky. And they should be so thin and delicate that you're a little bit irritated. If you're not like, oh my God, this is so hard, then you're not doing it right. I feel like this way of doing pepparkakor is also very, like the whole thing feels very specific to my family. I just assumed growing up and like when I came to Sweden that this was like universal, but like this is not how we do it at the bakery. Very different recipe, very different way of doing this. So this is what the offset spatula is for. They are so delicate. Oh my God. You can set them fairly close together. They don't puff up super much. This is definitely a gentle hands, gentle fingers kind of situation. You want to start with easy shapes when you are using the fresh dough. So these guys I would consider pretty easy because the legs, like they're not spindly. The hearts are super easy. Let me see here. What would I consider not easy? I have so many cookie cutters. I love cookie cutters. I love them so much. This is like not even a 20th part of my collection. I have so many back in California and they're all at my dad's house and he's like irritated about it, which to me is like the funniest part. My poor dad. Oh, well, it's a big house. It doesn't matter. The more you reuse the scraps, the more the dough is getting worked, the more flour you've worked in kind of a funny way, the more gluten you work in. Every time you work a dough that has gluten, you work up the gluten. That's why we need bread doughs, because we want to work up the gluten. And that's why in cake batters and in cookies, they tell you like, stop mixing as soon as it's all incorporated because you don't want to work up any gluten. So every time you roll out again and again, you are working up more and more gluten and you're adding more flour. So on the bad side, by the time you've gotten to the like scraps of the scraps of the scraps at the very like end of the dough, those are going to be your toughest cookies. Now they're not going to be so tough that you're not going to enjoy them, but they are going to be definitely tougher. The good thing about using like second or third scraps is that you can do more intricate, you can use more intricate cookie cutters more easily. What do I mean by that? Something like this. This part is small and this has legs. This isn't super bad, but like because of these legs here, it can be difficult to like move. This part gets really thin. This part gets really thin. This one, this star with the star cut out, also super annoying with a fresh dough because like this little star gets stuck and then it stretches and then it's just like all over the place. So these are annoying. But also, side note, are these not just the cutest? And this does make like super, super cute cookies. The North Star above Jesus? That's so cute. You cannot get better than that. So anyways, these guys beautifully laid out on here. They're gonna go into the oven. I'm gonna put them on a 6-minute timer and then check them. In my oven, because I've tested these and I know my oven, they should take 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Yes, not 8 minutes, not 9 minutes, 8 minutes and 30 seconds. However, I like to turn them around after 6 minutes. We will see today if my oven is behaving as it did last week. Also, sometimes ovens run hot if you have a fan on, which I don't suggest. I don't know your oven, so always be a little bit like cautious on your first round or two, and then you're gonna get into like a good flow. And then traditionally, you wouldn't ice these. A lot of bakeries now do, but at the same time, that's like, the iced ones are often like, they're really big ones, and then you're still gonna get like the smaller like 2-bite cookies. Those are not iced. And when we used to talk about icing them to my grandmother, she was always just like, absolutely not. What do you think this is? Gingerbread? This is pepparkakor. You don't ice it. Are you crazy? So obviously she didn't talk like that because Swedes do not talk like that. And that's not her accent, but I'm not going to do my Swedish accent for you guys. I saved that for in-person performances. It's pretty great though. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty funny. Also, when taking dough out of the bowl, don't grab too much because you don't want it to get warm. It's just gonna cause headaches for you. All right, and here are my first round of children. Beautiful. So I'm just gonna put you up here and then there we go. And you let this pan cool. And see, if I wasn't talking so much, I would have already cut these out and had the next tray ready. But instead, I can't shut up. Focus while you're doing this, unlike me. If they are roughly the same size, then you can put 2 different shapes on the same tray. I wouldn't put, what's a good example here? I wouldn't put the pigs and this star on the same because these like little points will bake super fast. And then the pig has like a much bigger body. And so like these two, like this might need like a minute less, whereas this needs more time. So if they're roughly the same size, then you can have 2 different shapes be on the same tray. But if you're concerned about it, then just like don't do it. Also, the offset is super clutch. I'm just going underneath it and picking it up. I would not be able to do that without my offset. So this is definitely like my best friend. Pan, and then you just like swoop, 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 swoop. There we go. And then I make sure that none of them are touching each other. So they flew around a little bit. And into the oven this goes again. These pigs are now totally cool, so I'm gonna eat one. Look how beautiful they are. It smells like my childhood. Tastes like my childhood too. Wow. They're so good. They're so good. Once your cookies have cooled down enough, you can put them into a cookie box. Like I have this vintage one that I picked up. Did I get this from my grandmother? I can't remember now. I don't know. I think this is hers. I can't remember now. But you just stack up your babies and pop them in. I like to always have a lot of paper towel in my cookie box. One, so that it protects them when they jostle around, and also it helps like wick up any moisture. And then these can sit in a cookie tin, and like you can have them for months. They're like any sort of like dried cookie that you get, or like dry, not soft, chewy cookie like that you get in a tin. They last for forever just out on the counter. One last note, you don't want to pull these onto a hot tray. That's why you need to have like 2 baking trays and then 3 pieces of parchment so you can rotate in a circle. I'm gonna continue making my pepparkakor for the rest of the afternoon, but thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this week's video, then go ahead and like and subscribe, and I hope that you have a great week and happy holidays, and that I'll see you around next week. Hej då!